Hello everyone, I'm Peyote, and welcome to my new video game review series, Soft Meat. Today, for my first ever review, I will be reviewing Batman Arkham Asylum for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and soon the PC. As is implied by the title, the game is set in the infamous Arkham Asylum, home of the worst villains Gotham City has ever seen. Unsurprisingly, the main villain in the game is Batman's arch-nemesis, the Joker, as he tries to take over the asylum. But quite a few other baddies make appearances as well. It's pretty clear from the beginning that this is more than just a prison break, and after a series of betrayals and twists, you find out the Joker has much more plan than just escaping the asylum or even killing Batman. I don't want to say much more than that for fear of spoiling anything, but I will say that the story isn't exactly anything groundbreaking, especially in the comic book world, but it is interesting and it gets you from point A to point B. It is a much darker story than you may have seen in the Batman universe, though. The tone is much more in line with the recent Batman movies, as well as the older animated feature Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. Now, the game takes a slightly different spin on combat than most games. Rather than slowly bringing in bigger and tougher enemy types, they simply try to overwhelm you with many weaker enemies. This is where the free flow combat system kicks in. The idea behind this system is that Batman is a martial arts master, and that normal thugs are really no match for him. The problem with this is that it makes the game a little bit too easy. All you'll really be doing is mashing the attack button and pushing the control stick in the direction of the enemy you want to hit. And avoiding damage can be as simple as pressing the counter button when someone is attacking. This is shown by little lightning bolts above their head, so you don't even have to really be paying that much attention. As you gain experience and buy upgrades, you can eventually unlock new combat abilities. But because the combat is already so simple, there really isn't much reason to use them, except to increase your score in the challenge mode, which I'll talk about later. There are two enemy types that kind of change things up later on in the game, but once you figure out how to handle them, they really don't put up much more of a challenge than the regular enemies. Boss segments really aren't much better. The majority of the boss fights are essentially the same fight, just with more enemies each time. All you really have to do is wait for the enemy to charge you, hit him in the face with a batarang to blind him so he runs into the wall behind you, then melee him in the back. This is literally the formula for almost every boss fight in the game. It only really gets hard when Joker's henchmen jump in as well, and it can be kind of hard to stop fighting them and throw a batarang at the boss. The only real variety in the boss battles is when you fight Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, and Scarecrow. But even though they're all different fights, they're all equally simple. And the latter two aren't even really fights. All you have to do is avoid them while traveling through their respective arenas. Other than the bosses, the only people you really have to worry about killing you are the guys with guns. They will tear Batman to shreds. The problem is that they only really show up in the stealth segments, so as long as they don't spot you, you're safe. These segments have you taking all the enemies out one at a time, as opposed to taking them all on en masse. Use your grappling hook to perch yourself on gargoyles and other structures above your enemies to get the jump on them, or crawl through vents and on lower walkways to get them from below without being seen. This is where your detective mode will come into play. You can switch Batman's vision to detective mode in order to track your enemies throughout the area. In this mode, you can see through walls, and any important structures, such as gargoyles, vents, and destructible walls, are highlighted. The henchmen follow scripted paths, Metal Gear Solid style, and only really deviate from this path when they hear or see something suspicious. After you have taken a few guys out, the remaining men will temporarily group up to make it harder for you to take them out individually. The problem is, they really don't stay together very long, and even if they did, there are plenty of ways to take out multiple targets at once. All in all, though, the gameplay is actually really fun. It's really entertaining watching Batman jump bad guy to bad guy, pulverizing them one by one. And it's fun coming up with creative solutions to the stealth segments. Just don't go in expecting any real challenges. Now, Arkham Asylum is actually a little bit smaller than you might expect, and it doesn't really take long before you start doing a bit of backtracking. It's not too bad, but it would have been nice to see some more unique areas, especially outside. The grounds of the asylum only really serve as a means to get from building to building, and it's disappointing to see them not used for anything else. There is a Batcave on the island, but it's really small and you only use it twice in the game. to scan something into the computer, and to pick up a new tool or two. The areas you visit are pretty varied though. You have a penitentiary, medical facility, botanical gardens, guess who you fight there, and a few others. All have unique architecture and layout. The game follows a linear path, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the majority of the game is really just going from point A to point B to initiate a boss fight or other event. The developers tried to break this up a bit by putting in detective scenes where Batman investigates an area to find a clue to where he needs to go next, but these segments are incredibly lame. Literally, all you do is go into detective mode, find an item that is already highlighted on your screen, and scan that item. That's it. At that point, all you have to do is follow the trail left by whatever you scanned, like a fingerprint or scent trail. Batman is supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and these segments do nothing to reflect that, or to make the story progression any more interesting. One thing that this game does do really well is extra content. Every area has a lot of secrets, and it's really fun tracking them all down. Throughout the game, there are Riddler trophies that unlock bonus content like challenge maps and character trophies. You can also find recordings of the inmates, some of which can be pretty creepy, like the interviews with Zaz, a maniacal serial killer loose in the asylum. In every distinct area, there are also a series of riddles you can solve. Some of them can be quite fun to solve, but some are just stupid. Like ones where you have to line up question marks that you can only see in detective mode. You kind of get the impression that after they had come up with all the real riddles, they just kind of got lazy and added the question mark ones as filler. You don't have to worry about finding all this before you beat the game either, because after you finish the campaign, the entire island is unlocked for you to explore. The last thing you can do is the challenge maps, but sadly, there really isn't much to say because all of the maps are ripped pixel for pixel from the campaign. If you're into leaderboards, then these modes will have some value, but otherwise you might as well just play the campaign again. The stealth maps do have Predator Medal challenges that may force you to do things a little differently than you would normally, but they never really amount to anything more than just taking down enemies in specific ways. However, if you get the PS3 version, you can do the maps as Joker, and I have to say it is really fun. In the combat sections, he has his own unique fighting style and moves, but these differences are purely aesthetic. He plays pretty much exactly like Batman. The real difference is in the stealth maps. Joker isn't like Batman. He doesn't swing from ledges and fly across the room. So, in order to move around, you have to rely on vents, ladders, and stairways, which really limits your tactics. One thing you have that Batman doesn't is a gun that can pierce multiple targets, but it has only one shot, so you need to make it count. You also have a pair of chattering teeth that act as a remote-controlled explosive, but you only have one of those as well. It's a nice change of pace to play as the Joker, and you'll have a lot of fun terrorizing the prison guards, but again, all of the areas are ripped from the game, so don't expect any new terrain to come with it. Overall, Batman Arkham Asylum is really fun, and to be perfectly honest, completely surpassed my expectations. It could, however, have been a lot better, and I hope they make a sequel that utilizes the full potential of the ideas in this game.
Oh, I'd like to thank my fans for their undying support, and the people of Gotham, who I'll be seeing very, very soon.